So the first question is to describe your evolution as a teacher of diversity and social justice.
You know, people have always come to me and said, gosh, it must be really hard as a biologist to incorporate issues of social justice and diversity into your classes. And I've actually seen it as, it's not even an evolution, it's always been part of who I am, and it's been the easiest thing to do, because science actually lends itself to inclusion. And inclusion is synonymous with social justice, because when you're inclusive, then you go into things and you see things as all under one umbrella. And biology is just so seamless in that regards, because we are diverse creatures. And even not across species, within our species there's so much diversity. So it just seems so easy to see that, wow, if there's so many different types of human beings, doesn't it make sense that we include each other under this same umbrella and accept each other under this same umbrella? So it's an easy fit for me. And it always has been over the last 25 years that I've been here.
Could you say more about personal or family, social or political events or factors that contributed kind of to bring you to become a professor that includes diversity and social justice?
Even though I didn't grow up in the same household beyond the age of 6 months with my mom and my dad, they separated pretty early on. Both of them are very political, and my dad not so much anymore in terms of being engaged in the outer community, but both of them at one point in their life, and my mom still to this day, are very engaged with trying to make life for other people better on a daily basis, through trying to advocate for those that aren't part of the mainstream fabric of our society that benefit from kind of the best that our society can offer. So I think that kind of inspired me. Even though I don't any longer have kind of a religious affiliation, I did attend all the way from first grade to college, Catholic institutions, and I went to a Jesuit college, Loyola Marymount, and yeah, we had to take theology classes, but the way that religion was taught, even in my parochial school, grammar school days, was all about social justice, and really religion and the Bible were secondary to social justice. So I felt like I was kind of raised in a tradition of that's what the Catholic Church is meant to do, is to help people in need, and so I think that had a profound influence on me. Yeah, and I think my upbringing, especially in the 70s, has had a profound influence over my detour into fiction, where I just last year completed a work of fiction and created my own social justice heroine. And the book has won 2 awards, and I just found out last night that it's a finalist for another award. And so I'm very excited about that, and it takes place in the 1970s around civil rights movements that were taking place, and deals with some really hard issues, and there's a lot of levity and comedy to try to lighten the load, but this is a character who's all about social justice.
Oh, that's so cool and beautiful. When you teach DSJ, what are your aims and goals?
To have students see that some of the biases and prejudices that exist in our society can easily be dispelled when we embrace science. So that's what I try to do in my courses, centered on topics, especially like in cell and molecular biology. I'm doing a course right now on humans and sex, and in both of those types of courses, it's really easy for me to bring in biology. For example, I'll give you an example. Intersex variances. So these are folks that are born with variations that could be as clearly evidenced by having ambiguous genitalia, to maybe not so observable. Maybe it's somebody who looks like a typical female, but maybe they may have testes that have not descended. They don't have ovaries and uterus, yet you would think that they look like a typical female would, but they're chromosomally male, XY. And so when I tell people these kinds of stories, not even stories, facts about intersex variances, are like, wow, how is that possible and how frequent is that? And when you actually look at the frequency of people that don't fit into these neat categories of male and female, you're talking about possibly 1 in 300 people in the population. And then it becomes much more real to them and much more like, wow, hey, this is not some anomaly. This is like, these are people that I walk with every day, and these are real people that deserve compassion and justice and rights, just like everybody else. And we're not even talking about sexual orientation. We're not even, that's a completely whole other issue, and that has a lot of biological basis to it as well. So I just like to bring that up, and students are just so excited. Actually, they're hungry for this kind of information. They almost sometimes feel cheated, like, why hasn't anybody told me about this before, coming to this stage of my life? Why has this been hidden from me, and how wrong is that? And when you start to look at that kind of diversity that exists, I mean, it lends itself to compassion and empathy. And in fact, I had a couple of papers that got the attention of one of the lead attorneys that took the Prop 8 case all the way to the Supreme Court. That was Ted Olson. And I had a team of lawyers that he organized for me that worked with me, and we wrote my argument of using intersex variances in the whole marriage debate that went forward to the Supreme Court. And so I was really, really proud of that. And so it's like when people say only a man can marry a woman, well, how do you define what's a man or a woman? Those are gender terms. Gender is about your psychological identity of yourself, which is very different than biological terms, male and female. Most times they coincide. Most females consider themselves, their identity as a woman. Most males consider their identity as a man. But lots of times that doesn't jive. And lots of times when you're talking about an intersex variance, and especially if you have a child that has been surgically altered after birth to be put into one of these boxes, male or female, without their choice involved at all. Many times the parent's choice isn't even considered in this. It's because we live in a society where we only accept these nice, clean boxes, and there are only 2 of them. And when we force a child into one of those boxes, and maybe we force them into a box that doesn't match what their brain tells them, those children then are going to grow up being in the wrong body. So you could have, let's say, a girl that was forced to be in a male box. Her brain is telling her she's a girl. She grows up, she's sexually attracted, she's heterosexual and sexually attracted to other males, but she's been put in a male box. What is society going to see that person as? Homosexual. And so who do they get to legally marry? And so that was kind of the argument, and I went through different variances, showing the biology and showing this issue. And when students hear it, they're like, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I was really happy that I got to be part of that case. And it was the only science-based argument, because science, I'm telling you, is the major way you can break down these walls. But people don't accept science or look at science. Because, I mean, a lot of people are scared of science. You know, that's for a variety of reasons. A lot of it has to do with science is hard to learn. but also sometimes you just don't have the right teachers that are just trying to break it down or can break it down in tangible terms that are accessible. But it can be done, and it needs to be done.
Is there anything else you'd say to describe how you came to see it this way?
I don't know, it just makes sense. It simply makes sense. I don't know how you would see it any other way, quite frankly. I mean, I don't understand. I hate it even when people say, "Oh, they're treating that person like an animal." I mean, why does that mean animals should be treated poorly and humans shouldn't be treated poorly? I mean, I love biology because it should humble all of us. We're all on this planet together, and we're actually all biologically related to each other. And so it's just like, doesn't that humble you? Doesn't that make you want to like love every living creature that you're surrounded by? Biology does that for us. It's so plain and simple. And it doesn't have to go against any kind of religious views. How does seeing us as genetically related to each other take away anybody's belief in a God? I quite frankly don't even understand that. It doesn't make sense to me. It's just like, wow, if anything, you would think that would strengthen your belief in a particular higher being or God. You know, like I say, I'm not religious, but I would think that for people that are religious, it's such a beautiful thing. Either way, if you're a God believer or not, it's just such a beautiful thing to see that you're connected to all the life that's around you. No, I'm very emotional about it because it's I don't know. This is why I'm here. This is why I do this. I mean, I love the students here. It's very important that that we do this work. And it's also very important for me too to not go into a classroom and put my points of view out there. It's very important that I only give the science. And let the students formulate their point of view based on hearing the science.
Could you say more about where you just started talking about,
Well,
how you bring it into the classroom and set a tone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important. I mean, I think some students have said, wow, I would never know what your opinion is on issues of contraception, on issues of abortion, because I'm teaching this humans and sex class, so these issues have come up. I would never know where your position is. And I think in most situations, students shouldn't know what my position is because that's not my job to give my opinion in a classroom. My job is to provide information, to guide students, to help for them to learn that information, to do analysis of the information, and come to understand it in a way, especially if topics are related to bigger issues of bioethics, that they come to understand the material so they can formulate their own opinion on a bioethical issue. That's not for me to tell them how to think or what to think. That would be wrong. But hopefully I've given them information that they can come to some decision. And all decisions are open. So I, like in my humans and sex class that I'm doing right now, they have to answer essay questions for each exam. And some of the essay questions are like, what are your opinions on sexually transmitted disease vaccines? And that's a big controversy, because a lot of parents are like, I don't want my child to be vaccinated to get protection from a sexually transmitted disease. So my job is, what is a vaccine? How do vaccines work? How do they protect from being infected if a person does actually come in contact with the real causative agent? Okay, so that's my job. How do they work? What are they doing? What are the health concerns? What are the health advantages? And so then they have the information to make their decision or formulate an opinion. That's my job, I think, as an instructor. Mm-hmm. Not to tell them, oh, this is what I think and this is what should be done. Well, I mean, I just ask people to think about it. So, I mean, I don't know if this answers your question. It just is one of the things that's coming to mind. When I spoke recently about prenatal screening. So I tell them how it's done, why is it done, what kind of information can you glean from the results, and I said, I know that this is very controversial, prenatal screening, because you'll have some folks say, well, why would a woman want an amniocentesis unless she's willing to have an abortion should the results come back that are demonstrating some genetic mutation in the fetus or some chromosomal abnormality, etc. And so I broached the question with the class, and I said, does everybody think that the only reason people would want that information is to make a determination if they're going to have the child or have an abortion? And I didn't get any kind of any response at that point. And I said, well, could you see that maybe an expecting parents would go through an amniocentesis, and even though the results came back to show that the fetus had a chromosomal abnormality, that they would still take that information, maybe decide not to abort, but that they would use that information to prepare for having a special needs child. And they're like, oh, yeah, I could see that. So, I mean, I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's just like giving them information to see things from all different sides, as much as possible. So even like when I talk about homosexuality in this course, I'll go through a lot of the results, the data that's been obtained to show that there might be a biological basis. And then I also point out, but look at this data, it's weak here, or there's holes in it over here. And so, so I want them to see that, wait a minute, you have to question everything. Everything should be questioned. And then I use kind of the banking business as an example. It's like in financial businesses, it's like I'm trying to play catch up. I wish I knew way more about the financial workings of the capitalistic free market economy, because I feel like if we all did, maybe we wouldn't have allowed what has happened and could happen again to occur. But we have to have that information, just like biology, science information is necessary, because there's going to be tons of policy decisions, and they're done all the time, that are made. And if we're not involved in that, then they're all getting done without our input.
How do students respond to some of what you're describing about how you bring it in the classroom?
I think it's favorable that my classes are packed all the time. They're overpacked. So I think students like it.
Okay. Can you describe a success and a challenge that you've experienced in teaching from a DSJ perspective or DSJ content?
I guess a challenge, maybe I'm going to look at it a different way, might be when I've had, and this has happened maybe 2 or 3 times, again with this course in humans and sex, where I've talked about female circumcision, also known as, a lot of people call it genital mutilation, where women have come to me and said that happened to them. And it's challenging for me to sit in this chair, hear that, and not say how horrible that must. I mean, not to say how horrible. I'll say I'm sorry, but to understand that there's coming from a culture where that is accepted, and for me not to come off judgmental. It's the most difficult thing, because I have a very strong opinion about it. And anyway, that's a very challenging position for me to be in. To be in a position where they're telling me this, and they're coming to the point where it's like, wow, based on what they've just learned in the class, something has been taken away from them. Yet they're in that culture. They may in fact have a little girl that's going to be subjected to that. And to try to straddle this very fine line of me not going over there and saying, oh my gosh, isn't this the most horrible thing that's been done to you, and are you going to tell everybody else about it and work to not have this done to anybody you know? I mean, that's challenging for me.
What about a success?
A success. I had last year in my course a man, I can't remember which African country he was from, and he came to talk to me after the lecture on female genital circumcision and told me that just the discussion opened his mind, and that he was thankful and he was going to look at this very differently. And so, I mean, I feel like those are successes, to just, I don't know, to see somebody potentially change a very strong cultural stance.